We're going to bring the meeting to order. Welcome everybody to the regular board meeting of CCWD. It's Wednesday, December 13th at 1 p.m. Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, can you take roll call, please?
Director Underhill,
Here.
Director Davidson,
Here.
Director Cicada,
Here.
Director Thomas, and President Ratterman.
Here. Okay, item 2 on our agenda is public comment. At this time, members of the public may address the board on any non-agendized item. The public is encouraged to work through staff to place items on the agenda for board consideration. No action can be taken on matters not listed on the agenda. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per person. Do we have any public comment today? Okay, Francisco, and then Ralph is also indicated he's. I'm glad you guys work it out.
Ralph Goldman, Paparopoulos, Merry Christmas, everyone. 2-pound box of Seas candy back there for CCWD. Appreciate all your work. Take care.
Thank you. Merry Christmas. Thank you, Ralph.
Thank you.
Someone open up that box back there.
I was gonna say, I think that needs to be inspected by the board.
Yeah, we might need a recess.
Well, I can't beat that. Francisco de la Cruz, Valley Springs, CCWD Advisory Group. I spoke with Mr. Isaac today from IB Consulting to clarify my understanding of the cost of service study and its relationship to your budgeting function. And as I understand it, the first year is your 23-24 budget. The rest of the 4 years in the cost of service study are projections and or estimates from staff as to what you would be spending to deliver the services. My question to him was, okay, so if there is a gap between the actual budget adopted and the projected budgets that were in the 5-year rate case study, cost of service study, wouldn't that change how those costs would be allocated based on the way the model works? He said, yes, it would change the rates, et cetera. And so that's why there's the true up. Unfortunately, the true up only happens once a year, or that's the plan. My question for you is, what numbers are you following on a monthly or quarterly basis to make sure that it isn't a huge true up required at the end of the year to get back into the good graces of what the cost of services study told us we were going to be spending in these certain amounts to cover these rates? If you're spending different amounts than what you said you were going to spend, those rates are not going to be met. They're either going to be under or over. And how do you know? And I've been trying to get metrics, I've been trying to get indicators, et cetera. And to date, I don't have anything that I can rely on to say, hey, we're on the way to the right road. And so I'm requesting of the board, how do I get a copy, electronic machine readable copy of the cost of service study? Because according to Mr. Isaac, you own it, you share copies of it.
It's on the website.
It's
It's on our website.
I mean, the actual Excel spreadsheet.
The cost of service study is on the website.
No, I know. I'm asking for the Excel spreadsheets that are printed on the website. All of those are not readable. They're readable by me, but they're not calculable. I can't.
You just make a request. I mean, make a public records request. I mean, I'm sure we'll give it to you, but
That's all I was saying. I mean, I don't want to get too
Yeah.
formal. I'm just saying so is that also possible for the actual budgets adopted?
absolutely. I mean,
Great.
that's on our website, I believe, as well. Am I wrong? And I think we can't talk a lot about this, but maybe we can get him the information about how often we do review our budget annually. It's not once a year.
No, I understand that. It's the true up that's gonna be once a year. The cost of service study to the methodology that was used to see, did you do what you said you were gonna do? And I'm saying, well, I don't wanna wait a year. I think we can do something better. But
Okay.
there'll be other
Okay.
comments on other agenda items related to that. Thank you.
If you would follow up with,
Yeah, I will.
with someone, we can get you
I will.
those things. All right, thank you. Any further public comment? I see Director Thomas has joined us. Okay. Item 3 on our agenda, board reconstitution and election of officers. I'm going to turn the meeting over to our general manager, Mr. Minkler.
Let me just soak in the power of running the board meeting for just a minute here.
Just a minute.
Okay, so I think at this point, we'll just entertain a motion for a nomination for board president.
I'd like to make a motion to nominate Russ Thomas for president.
A
I'll
second.
second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any public comment? Okay, Kate, will you pull the board?
Yeah,
Director Underhill,
Yes.
Director Davidson,
yes.
Director Cicada,
Yes.
Director Thomas,
Yes, wholeheartedly, yes.
and President Ratterman.
Yes.
Former president.
Okay, Michael, you still
Okay.
have the.
Yep, and then a motion for the vice president.
I'll make a motion for Bertha Underhill.
I'll second.
And a roll call? Or sorry, public comment. And the roll call.
Director Underhill,
Yes.
Director Davidson,
Yes.
Director Cicada,
Yes.
Director Ratterman,
Yes.
President Thomas.
Yes.
And so as per usual, we'll make that change effective now, and the incoming president will make committee appointments and JPA appointments in January. And that concludes my portion of the meeting.
Well done.
Thank you.
Director Thomas, or President
Make-
Thomas.
Make that President Thomas. If everyone will kind of bear with me here, first of all, I want to thank you very much for your support for letting me assume the position that I've been preparing for all year. And anyway, it's going to sound contradictory, but I would rather that the vice president run this meeting because of the limitations that I'm facing here, not being able to see expressions and read the room and stuff. So Bertha, would you be able to run the rest of the meeting while I kind of just listen in and make comments from time to time?
Oh, absolutely. Yes,
And-
I'll go ahead.
And
And
if I
run the
could
meeting.
just note, Madam Vice President, really quickly, that our Director Thomas and Director Cicada are participating remotely under the exception, under the new Brown Act rules that allow that for illness. And so that's why normally we don't have directors joining remotely anymore, but that's the purpose, or that's the rationale for it today.
Yeah,
That's fine.
I wish that I could be there, but I figured that Stacy would block me at the door.
And I would rather be there as well, instead of being sick with the COVID.
All right, let's move on.
Okay. I'm ready. And I also wish to thank the board very much for my election as vice president, and I will certainly be ready to fill in whenever Russ is not available or Russ has other conditions or whatever. So we'll go ahead with the item number 4 on the agenda, and that is the consent agenda.
I'll move for acceptance of the consent agenda.
Second,
Will you call the roll?
We have,
Director Underhill,
Yes.
Director Ratterman,
Yes.
Director Davidson.
Yes.
Director Sakata,
Yes.
President Thomas.
Yes.
Okay. Item approved. And we go for public comment. Anytime we have no,
No, the consent.
Put a new business.
just on to new business. Okay. 5A, discussion action regarding the amendment of the fiscal year 23-24 personnel allocation budget. Stacy.
Afternoon. Making sure I'm still on. All right, I am here today to request a personnel allocation that will result that will not result in an increase to this fiscal year's budget. And the changes asked today will result in future fiscal year fundings to come from FERC water rights interest reserve funds. As you know, the water resources manager left us a few months ago. We have unfortunately not filled his position as of yet. When employees leave positions, I'm often up here at explaining to you our process of evaluating our staffing needs. We did that. We have gone through that process the last couple of months once again and determined that our most important staffing needs right now are within the administrative services department. Of the 3 finance employees that we have, all 3 are eligible to retire within the next 3 years. We have some major projects coming up within the finance group, including the implementation of Tyler, which is going to be a major undertaking. Also with the level of, or the number of projects that we have, there's additional accounting project management that needs to be taking place. So what we're asking for today is an accountant for the administrative services division. Again, they will help with project accounting and as well as Tyler implementation and then succession planning for the 3 employees that are currently eligible to retire shortly. We still are looking to hire and fund a water resources manager.
Okay.
It's okay. We are still looking to fund a water resources manager, and with the addition of the accountant, we'll have a $56,000 savings in our personnel budget. And then we fund the rest of the water resources manager position with the FERC water rights interest reserve fund. Any questions?
Not yet.
Comments, questions? Any comments, questions?
None for me.
President Thomas?
Well, as I read through this staff report, I can see how the covering all these various expenses have been very well explained for the short term. But with 5 million in the in that FERC relicensing account, and we're going to be potentially taking, I think it was about $100,000 of it in 1 year. Is there a plan going forward? Will this become a regular part of the budget, or is it going to that water resources person, will that be paid for out of that fund for the foreseeable future?
great question, President Thomas. I'm glad you asked that. No, we wouldn't normally, we wouldn't plan on long-term expenditures as a drawing on a reserve fund. In this case, I think we're making an exception because we hope to have other sources of revenue identified within a 2 to 3 year period of time. But the job functions and what we anticipate that position focusing on over the next couple of years fits within the purposes of those reserve funds. So until we have that other revenue stream established, we think that's an appropriate way to fund the position because it gives us this opportunity to address multiple staffing issues without affecting the operating budget. And I think by, that within that 2 to 3 year window, if for some reason, we are still, reserve funding that position, we'll have some turnover during that period of time to reevaluate, whether this is a sustainable model going forward or not. But we'll have some flexibility there, I think, in that period of time to reevaluate.
Okay, and if I understand by reading the packet or the agenda or the packet, we're saving money because the position is not filled, or we haven't had any success in filling it.
That's true for this fiscal year. We won't have to draw from that reserve fund or amend the budget, and we can still add that position. But looking forward to future fiscal years, it would be, adding that position. We would just be offsetting that increase with the FERC and Water Resources Reserve Fund.
Okay,
Okay,
at this point, go
As
ahead.
a follow-up
Sorry.
question, I remember some discussion about the fact that we might have to rely upon a consultant to provide some of the work that we may need in the water resources realm. Say that we had to pay a consultant $100,000 or more. Would that money come from the same source of that reserve, or are there contingency funds in the budget that would take care of that?
If it's a normal operating cost, we would not use the reserve fund for that. We always have to rely on consultants for certain water resources functions. We don't have a hydrologist on staff, for example. So water rights reporting and water legal counsel, other water resources functions where we regularly on an ongoing basis rely on professional services, outside professional services, but those are operating costs that we wouldn't draw from reserves for. If they're one-time expenditures or increases in expenditures for a purpose that is appropriate for that reserve fund, then yes. But for the most part, if it's an ongoing operational expense, no, that would be part of the operating budget.
I do have a question when it's my turn. When it's my turn, go
Okay,
ahead.
Cindy,
I didn't
Russell,
relinquish the floor yet, Cindy, but go ahead.
No, I just
No,
want
no.
to get it out there. When you guys are done, I just wanted to say something.
I'm just kidding. Go right ahead.
Okay. So, Michael, if we approve this today, is like, I think in year 2, you have it kind of figured out through year 2 of how we're going to pay for this. So is this considered like a temporary situation? And then after year 2, we have to reevaluate to see if we can go forward with this second accountant?
No, I think so. Up to 3 years was the thought with the reserve funding solution in place. I think with that period of time, like I said, we'll have some turnover during that period of time to reevaluate whether this is a sustainable, whether we've identified another revenue stream for that position or not. And we our limited term positions are challenging. It creates a recruitment problem. And so if we can I anticipate needing, obviously the water resources manager position. But we will be able to reevaluate the staffing level and admin services over that period of time without designating any of these as limited term positions necessarily.
I'd like to, with a yes vote, I'd like to make sure that just before the end of year 3, we start reevaluating if this is something we can sustain.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
know
Well,
the need is there, but I also don't, when we did this rate study, I don't think we included projections for hiring a new position. So I don't want those funds,
Right.
if we have any extra, used for that.
Right.
Anything in the rate study should be CIP, in my opinion.
Yeah,
May-
so that's why the
yeah.
proposal here is, as far as the operating budget's concerned, it's cost neutral, but
Yeah.
we absolutely will be revisiting that and bringing it back to the board if it becomes a permanent.
Yeah.
And
Excuse me, may I ask that if you want to be recognized, if you raise your hand? Okay, so we can make sure we get you, Cindy.
Well, fine. How do you do? Hands up.
Scott,
Okay, when it comes, we've done this, or staff has done this several times, and I appreciate the creativity that Michael and department heads and especially Stacy and HR come up with when we get into these situations where we have a lot of retirees. We can read in the report that the entire accounting department is expected and possibly will turn over in the next two or 3 years, and the fourth person in that group is already retired, and we're dragging her back for more work. I think this is a creative way of doing this. And in the next 2 or 3 years, I think to address Cindy's concerns, we're probably going to lose one, if not all, of those other three to retirement that we're talking about continuing to pay with this with this new position. Again, I appreciate the creativity, and I think this I do also appreciate the fact of going through all the different options that we have in this report, and then deciding on the fourth one. There's a lot of, with this size district, there is a lot of duplication of positions and duplication of not duplication, but over
Overlaps.
some people doing several jobs, and even in different departments, and helping out where they can and where they have talents. And I think we've done a pretty good job of moving people around here. I mean, we have done a lot of hiring in the last couple of years, but not new positions. Just moving people around, moving people up, moving people to a better position that exercises their skills. I'm certainly in favor of this, and I hope the creativity continues, and especially when it can save us a little bit of money, and look forward, we're not having an excess of people in the building doing the limited jobs. Thank you.
For those
That's-
Hands
quickly.
up.
okay, Cindy?
Thank you. So I do agree that being creative, it looks really good, and I do appreciate them, staff putting it together like so. But I'd like, if we have a yes vote, which I am in favor of this, but if we could make it to where we have it on the books or on the minutes that we will reevaluate it, I would say in year 3, after 3 to 6 months, because I'd like to have it evaluated prior to doing the budget. And hopefully we will have those markers knowing where we are with the rate study. So again, I'm in favor for it, but I would just like to make sure we have something that states we must review it at a certain time in year 3 prior to the budget, to see where we're at, so we can also discuss the rate increase. Okay, thank you.
Well,
Question?
won't
Jeff?
we review this every year during budget?
Yeah.
sorry, my microphone's not on. Yeah, we always do. We always review the personnel allocation as a part of budget adoption, but I appreciate the concern there and wanting to stay, track this separately and specifically because of the unique circumstances around this. So I'll work with Stacy and make sure we have and I would say even, maybe even an annual check-in, not just in 3 years or prior to that budget adoption in 3 years. Just to kind of touch base on where we are with this.
Well, if I can
Okay.
continue.
Jeff,
Yeah, I mean, my only concern is that we look at what we anticipate the FERC workload to be, and then we budget that amount, because we've set that money aside for the preliminary process of getting our FERC relicensing accomplished. So we don't want to, rob from that, but it's appropriate to use it as we're being asked to do today. So as long as we look at the workload and make sure that we're not robbing from it to do something else, I'm fine with that.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's the goal here.
Anyway, I move for acceptance.
okay, I have couple of questions. The remaining 105,000 will come from the FERC water rights reserve funds. And how are we going to pay that back?
So there is no revenue stream that is currently resupplying that reserve fund right now. So this is, as Director Davidson pointed out, this is one of the purposes of those reserves is to set us up for, set the path for our relicensing. And that's a huge part of what this position will be doing.
And
So it's squarely within the purposes of the purpose of those funds. But as of right now, we don't currently we don't currently have a revenue stream going into that reserve fund. That's something we're working on.
Jeff,
Without saying too much, but that's our project costs for relicensing are supposed to come eventually out of the project.
Right, absolutely, yeah. So we're not anticipating funding relicensing out of that reserve. That reserve would fall far short of the cost of relicensing. So really
But we are going to keep track of all the costs.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then
Track all those
the
costs.
project should pay it back.
This will set up this will set us up for relicensing and have a financing plan in place to cover the cost of relicensing, but it won't come from that reserve and it won't come from anywhere else in CCWD's budget. It will have to be from the profit.
And in history, we've been talking about this fund to use specifically for this purpose. As we got closer to relicensing, we knew our water resources manager is going to be doing a lot more of this work. And if he's not doing it, we're hiring attorneys to do it outside.
Right, and we actually did transfer in from the FERC reserve for other professional services this year because there is a lot of work going on that front. So there are other professional services that we're using that fund for this year. But part of that effort is to make sure that we have a funding mechanism in place to pay for this, so we're not just drawing down a reserve.
my next question was on the water resources specialist or the water resources manager vacancy. Now, you haven't had any, you've identified the job opening is out there. You haven't had any responses.
Yeah, we're still recruiting for that position.
You're still recruiting. And it's slow
Yes.
and it's very slow.
Yeah, it's the skill set that's hard to find.
Whatever happened to the headhunter?
Yeah, so I try not to use recruiters if we don't have to. And for the most part, we've been successful. Stacy and her team are pretty good at doing it in-house. And so we only resort to that when we really kind of exhaust our own in-house options. But in this case, we may need to go there.
Okay, so this water resource specialist job has only been open for
It's been a couple months.
couple
now.
months now.
Yeah.
So we can afford to wait for other applicants?
Yeah, so we've been having some internal discussions over the last week about how to move forward with recruitment, whether we just look at all other sources or places than where we've advertised already, or whether we jump to the possibility of a recruiter for that position.
Okay. And we're not, it's not hurting us not to have that position filled at this point.
Oh, it hurts. It's a huge additional burden. Our whole water resources department is vacant right now.
Right,
and we have no
uh-huh.
manager and we have no specialists. So
Okay,
it is a strain. What we've done essentially is similar to what happened when we had an extended vacancy in the external affairs manager position. Is we just create an internal team of all of the different, because water resources touches on multiple different departments, engineering, operations, customer service, and external affairs. So we're regularly meeting now to make sure that we don't miss our reporting deadlines, that we're maintaining all of our compliance requirements in water resources, and that those efforts are not, falling through the cracks while we have, those two vacancies. And it creates a big strain on multiple different people. So
because everyone is taking on another
right.
load.
I'll
Okay,
second this
Well-
motion.
okay. I'm asking for a motion
We have a motion
And a second.
and
and
a
a
second.
second. Call the roll.
Public comment.
Excuse me, public, now I ask for public comment.
Does Russ have something to say?
Public. Cindy, did you? Oh,
I was
No.
just gonna say we needed a public comment, so you guys got it.
yeah,
I think
okay.
Russ had something to say. Russ.
Russ?
Well, I didn't hear anybody second that motion. I wanted to do that to get it off the table. So,
Yeah, it was seconded. Yes, it was seconded.
okay, very fine.
Okay. You call the roll?
Director Underhill,
Yes. Oh,
Director,
public comment. Sorry. Okay.
Thank you. Mike Rogers, Valley Springs. Reading the job description and trying to understand the role of the water resources manager. Mike, I can see where that's a valuable necessity. My question is, when you do the analysis from an HR perspective, I didn't see anything in here that referenced that you considered a contract employee for the accountant role. I mean, it seems like some of the activities are succession planning, implementation of Tyler more quickly and efficiently. I mean, once that work's done, is that position really necessary in year 2 or 3? So that's my question is, could this be a contract employee instead of a full-time employee, particularly if there is not a source of funding to cover the position after 2 or 3 years?
Yeah, so
Maybe
we
in
looked
that
at
first year.
we looked at the possibility of a limited term employee in that position. I think, like I said, we know we're going to have an opportunity in that period of time to reevaluate the staffing level and the appropriate classifications in admin services. And so I think it's advantageous for us to not put those constraints on it from a recruiting perspective to make sure we get the right fit for that position.
That's fair.
But we certainly did look at that possibility.
In the succession planning, it also references a new position that was created a year ago of a business services manager. So this is an additional add.
So just to clarify on that position, though, we didn't increase our staffing level. We did add that position, but it was an internal hire that we did not replace. So it wasn't
Okay.
an increase in our staffing level.
Yeah, it's not clear to me what the role of the business services manager is with reference to the 3 departments: customer service, accounting and finance, and information systems.
So the business services manager oversees both customer service and IT, and
Okay.
then also provides assistance to the finance and accounting functions, but oversees customer service directly and IT also.
Is there an org chart of
There is.
online that
I'm not sure. I mean, we should make sure the updated one does make it onto the website. It
We'd like
has
to,
changed, but yeah, we
have
can
that
get you an
for
updated.
future reference? Because it is kind of confusing.
That would
with
certainly
reference
help.
Positions
Yeah.
that are not really described, and
We
you know,
can send that to you.
we are still novices, trying to understand, how the mechanics
this is
work,
right.
so.
We'll get that to you.
But I would certainly encourage you to continue to consider other options, outside of just adding additional staff. I mean, clearly, if you move from one position to another without a net add, that of course is always, you know, a first option if it's
Yeah.
possible. So, thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Any further public comment? Seeing none. Call the roll.
Director Underhill,
Yes.
Director Ratterman,
Yes.
Director Davidson.
Yes.
Director Cicada,
Yes.
President Thomas.
Yes.
Passed. Motion
So,
approved.
Gonna start singing before meetings.
Right.
Okay, we go on to item 5B, which is discussion action regarding proposed amendment to professional services agreement for hydroscience engineers for the Arnold Wastewater Treatment Facilities Improvement Project, CIP 15095.
Alrighty, good afternoon, board members. Charles is a little bit under the weather today, so I'll cover this topic for him.
Man,
So
this meeting's
basically,
short. Get the hell out of here.
we've got this project that's essentially designed and ready to go, but there's an opportunity to get it grant funded for construction. So we decided to put a pause on it and seek this grant funding. It comes from the State Water Board, a grant opportunity. So we're pursuing it, but it kind of modifies the how we apply for it. And we have to prepare an engineer's report, which is essentially our preliminary engineering report that was prepared for the project, modifying it a little bit and getting it into the format that the state will accept and the feds will accept. And likewise with the environmental documentation, it has to conform to NEPA. So we're modifying that as well. So these are just additional costs to cover that, to go after the basically $8 million grant for construction. And if there are any, I believe Charles is online. If there are any project specific questions, you know. he could
Yeah,
help me out.
I have a quick question on, how sure are we, and we know we're spending $130,000 to do this extra work, to submit for the grant. What are our chances? I mean, if we're
I
going to
think
evaluate,
they're fairly good. I mean, it was brought to our attention that, you know, this is a grant eligible project, given the circumstances of the area it serves.
in reading that report, who was it that brought it to our attention that let us become aware of it at this late?
You know,
time?
I can't answer that. I'm not really sure. I don't know if Charles is online.
Chuck?
Yeah, good afternoon. Hopefully you can hear me okay.
Yes.
Yeah, so actually Michael and I had a discussion, and he said, you know, gosh, you know, we need to really see if we can get a grant for this project. So, you know, it's based on being a disadvantaged community, and that's based on your median household income. And our sewer system happens to fall kind of within some areas that are low income. And so that kind of helps our situation. And, you know, so we did the state board is very cautious about this process. So they actually made us submit a pre-application prior to this, what we're going to do now. And so that they could review the median household income, our service area, and they are in agreement that we are eligible to apply for this construction grant.
So
Yeah,
just barely, and if I could just add on to that real quick, because you know it's based on looking at the service area, because most of Arnold is not. But when we focused in on just the boundary of our sewer service area, it actually does qualify, and so just trying to drill down to that level to make sure we get every every grant dollar we can get, is kind of what led to this. It does create delay and some additional cost. It's not necessarily free money. But if we can secure a grant for this project, it would be huge, for our sewer CIP. This is, I'll take a quick minute to get on my soapbox a little bit on how, this is, it just kind of highlights to me, again, you've heard me say this before, but just the state has such a huge focus on disadvantaged communities to the point where you're really not eligible for grant funds if your service area doesn't fall within those economically disadvantaged communities, which is understandable. We do, it's understandable why the state would want to direct resources to those communities. But in our case, and I think a lot of other water districts cases, it's overly restrictive, because what we know is grant funds that help fund our CIP, help all of our ratepayers, whether it's located in a disadvantaged community or not. And 30% of our ratepayers are located in disadvantaged communities, but we can't get grants for most of those service areas because they technically are not. So it just is a gap in the way that the state and the federal government both allocate their grant funds, and we continue to try to raise that issue with these funding agencies. But in this case, as in some of the other projects that we have, it did happen to fall within that criteria, so we're going after it.
Directors,
Yeah, I have a couple.
Jeff?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of one of the things, I think the state and the feds, they develop these grants and the criteria mainly for cities. So the whole city could be a disadvantaged area and have one sewer system where we have multiple and overlapping. It makes it harder for us.
Right.
But the one thing I was curious about is how much money is in this small community wastewater funding program? I mean, do we know if it's over prescribed, or is it well funded, or what?
It is well funded. I know we're anticipating a significant state budget deficit, but these are also federal funds that go into the SRF. So I haven't heard of any concerns on the funding level for that program right now. If anything, they've received infusions of funds in the last couple of years.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Other comments? Russ?
Yes, Bertha, I have one. I had to reread through this staff report a couple of times, and I think that I have made the right interpretation, but the ask is for 130,489 for the initial consultant. But in the report, it says that Dewberry is going to be a subcontractor for 84,550. I just want to clarify that the 84,000 is contained within the 130.
That is correct.
Okay.
Yes,
that's
it is. Okay.
I'll make
Any-
a motion for acceptance.
Second.
Okay. Public comment? Okay. Seeing none, we'll call the roll.
Director Underhill,
Yes.
Director Ratterman,
Yes.
Director Davidson,
Yes.
Director Cicada,
Yes.
President Thomas.
Yes.
Okay. Motion passed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Okay.
Oh.
Now we are ready for our reports. Item number 6. Operations Department.
Good afternoon, directors. So while the
You're looking
So while
for,
the PowerPoint loads, one thing to note in the ops report that's a little bit different in the Jenny Lind service areas, staff thought it important to also have a list of active issues that they're working on. So not only is this within the Jenny Lind distribution system, a list of accomplishments for November, but it also lists out what they weren't able to get to, and they get to a heck of a lot. So I just wanted to highlight that and then jump in here to the presentation. So Baldwin, service line abandonment. So you guys can see in this image here. So image on the left, kind of hard to see. There's a service line and a corporation stop, which is what's directly threaded into the water main, failed. So oftentimes this is, when the development was constructed, a lot of services were constructed to empty lots. And so we will find these, and if it's in a tough spot, so to speak, on the roadway, or kind of a difficult shutdown that requires the shutdown of a lot of our customers to repair, we'll go ahead and just abandon it. And then at that point in time in the future, if somebody buys that lot, needs a service connection, we'll go ahead and reconnect it. So this is also the case on Copper Cove Drive. We have these service laterals that pop up, and they're to an empty box in a field. And so when we have the opportunity, if it's a dangerous location, we'll go ahead and abandon it. So this is.
Damon, I got a quick question
Yeah,
about
yeah.
your report in your, in the packet.
Yeah.
On page 2, you have a chart.
Yes.
It's showing water production district-wide in millions of gallons.
That's correct.
And it looks like the 2023 line is down to 0 production in November on purpose, or what?
So we're the operations department, and we're not that savvy at making the last. So you're always going to be a month behind. So this report should just look at October as being your endpoint. And we will work on within operations of making the line that goes to 0 disappear, so that doesn't give you the false impression that we didn't produce any water there. We just, Jesse and I work on that. Yeah. So
I mean, this is a
if you
huge,
can imagine
huge failure.
picture in
None
your
of us
mind's
heard about.
eye that production ends in October. One thing though to note, I'm glad you brought this up because we don't often talk about this graph, is that you can see that production has, 2021, we were hot and heavy, and I think that's some of that can be attributed to COVID. We had a lot of folks that were in the community as a result of COVID, but you can see in 2023 we've dropped back down to kind of the lower levels that were more attributable to when we were in a drought conservation mode.
Does it also have to do with all the work we've done on the distribution?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think
Absolutely.
it's both.
Yeah.
Man,
Absolutely.
if you guys ever tried the technical way of putting a piece of paper over, like,
Yeah.
and then taking another picture of it?
Actually, that's very technical. We didn't some whiteout.
Or whiteout.
Do this
Yeah,
trick.
whiteout.
Yeah.
There you go.
Little sticky
Yeah.
note on there.
So for, to digress a little bit too far, it's just like I can grab the image and put it right into the report. So it's like, but yeah, we'll definitely clean that up.
Well, another suggestion is the lines are so close together and it's really, really difficult. Is it possible to make it just zone in on from 100 to 100 to 200 so that the lines are, so that you see some differences between the years? And looking at it from this angle, this looks like every year is exactly the same.
I might
Yeah.
make a suggestion that instead of us trying to solve it here, maybe we just get Kelly to advise the operations department on this, because he's a master at this.
Yes.
Okay.
And well, yes, and absolutely. And I think we could probably just make it its own page and make it landscape so you can see it all.
There you go.
You know what I mean? And that way you can differentiate
And,
between.
and I understand Dylan's in IT. He's pretty damn good at this.
Yeah,
stuff.
yes. Thanks, you guys. Ahead of time.
And then we'll be able to spend more time on
Right.
on that page.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we can talk about production.
Uh-huh.
Okay,
Okay.
you can anticipate that change for sure. Okay, so these slides are really interesting, these images. So if you're just imagining that you're in the driveway here, this concrete driveway in Rancho, and you look over and you see a meter set, and you can see the blue marks in the middle of the street. And then you turn around and you look behind you and you see all that green grass down on the down gradient side of the driveway. So we have water perking out. We have a service line leak. We know that. We have water perking out. It's showing up down the hill in the drainage, and it's making the grass green. And you've got shrubs down there that are growing. And our guys listen, and then they pinpoint the leak to be in the middle of the street, right where those blue marks are. So just kind of looking, the image on the left, you're looking downhill and you can see where they marked the leak. Okay, the leak is here. And this is what happens. And this is what's so challenging about Poker Flat and Copperopolis, because you can have leaks at Perk 300, 400 feet away from where they actually are.
Mhm.
And this is, just kind of a testament to our folks in Rancho, how good they are. So they marked that location. And you can see the image on the left, they're jackhammering out that spot. And then the image on the right is the service line. Kind of hard to see, but at the top, so kind of like the top 25% of the service line, you see water shooting on the side of it. So they nailed it. And so
Look at even the backfill on the road. It's like,
exactly. And I have a couple of pictures of the backfill, and we have folks that saw that backfill firsthand. It's kind of astounding. But hats off to our guys and the equipment. They know how to use listening device equipment. They're really good at it, and they do a great job. This one, service line T and curb stop replacement for a meter box set. So you can the nice one in the image on the left, you can see the crimpers on the T, kind of like at the bottom of the T. So this is to isolate the water from the main. So we actually pinch the service line so we can actually replace that T, and all that corroded brass that you see on the image on the left is gone. And there's a couple repair clamps. You can see they're now gone. But there is a repair clamp in the image on the right where that crimp was, because when our guys go ahead and crimp a line off, they make a weak spot, and we always cover that weak spot back up with a repair clamp. Just to illustrate that they're really thoughtful about the work that goes on. Here's another flare. So this one is not actually in the coupling to two sections of pipe. It's right there in the middle of the pipe. And our guys jump on it and get those replaced rather quickly. And you can kind of see what the cause here is on the brass. Just over time, that service inside of that flared connection gives up the ghost a little bit, and then the water actually has the strength to erode away the brass. And we see that a lot throughout our distribution systems. So this is an image of the tour that we took some folks on of the distribution system. And to your point, Director Davidson, it's a little hard to tell, but on the right side of both of these images is where the distribution crew in years past had put a repair clamp and backfilled with AB with base rock. And then what we were going to do in this repair is go all the way to the main and replace the whole service. So all of that fill on the left side of each picture is the native, and you can see those big old giant rocks that just live on top of the service that cause the leak. And so like we talked about before, we have the distribution crews that will jump in there, put a repair clamp on, kind of do the immediate emergency work, stop the leak. And then oftentimes our utility crew will go through then and wholesale replace. Well, when our distribution guys have a chance, they also do that. They'll say, hey, we've been in this hole 4 times. We're only 2 feet away from the water main. Let's go ahead and just extend this trench 2 more feet and replace the whole thing. So this is what Mike and Francisco and Mike got to see when we were out in the field, was that very hole. And Curtis and Mike DeBerg and members of our utility crew, Joe Kelly and Chris Reese, they all just did a fabulous job, and hats off to everybody and hats off to you all for taking the time to go see what it is that they do. They do great work.
And Damon, in the prior slide, I saw somebody with a vest on. Is that a new employee? That guy on the right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Some new employees there. Yep.
I see.
Looking good in that high vis. Yeah.
Great.
So here's West Point, and you guys all acknowledge that on service laterals over time, you get the repair clamp on the black service line. It's just kind of it's the appetizer before every meal in the operations report. This is an interesting one because it almost looks like there's a pipe, a hose clamp in the image on the left on that one failure there. So we're not really sure how that happened. And then you can see, hopefully that's a service really close by, but I'm not. That's okay. So that explains a lot. So sometimes you have well-meaning folks that try to stop a leak. Just keeps on going. Some more work in West Point. So this is Acorn Way, is a section of the raw line that comes from the Middle Fork pump station. So we have the Middle Fork McCollum River pump station, and we push water halfway up the hill, and the Acorn pump station takes it the rest of the way. And there's a Y on that raw water pipeline alignment that had a leak. CAL FIRE 2-inch had a leak at their meter. So the crew was able to put in a meter riser. That's that brass apparatus you see there with the 2-bolt flanged connection. So really nice, best possible situation, really. The lay length was the same and they were able to just drop that in on a riser and put a brand new AMI meter in there and kind of get back in action.
I have
Yeah.
one question. Whenever you go up there and you find all these repairs or these leaks, at all times you're looking at ways of improving that infrastructure. I mean,
Absolutely.
you're
Yep.
changing your pipes or
Yep, absolutely. And that can all be attributed to the staff that are in the field in those locations. Case in point, the next slide right here. So we have these 2 meter sets, they're called. You have a meter box in the ground that somebody's cutting this corner and driving over those meter boxes and just crushing all of the meter, causing water leaks. And so we put the bollards in there. We talk to the neighbors and talk to everybody and say, hey, we're going to put bollards here at our meter sets so we can protect our infrastructure. So we're always trying to protect and improve and make our systems better. So here's a septic tank installation. So what usually happens with our collections and construction crew is we dig the hole for the septic tank install. And then when we purchase the tank, the company will just come set it exactly where we want it, where we dug the hole, because we don't have equipment that's strong enough, powerful enough to drop that in. We don't want to have to drop a septic tank here at the yard and, damage the yard in some way and then have to throw it on the back of a truck and haul it to wherever it's going to live.
that's what
Exactly.
that would be silly for
Right.
us to be doing that.
Yes. And so it's just, highlight how good our guys are. I mean, this tank hole is just like right to spec, perfect. Dropped it right in, put the risers on it. And we're in action. So, and everybody's happy. So hats off to everybody. That tank was, I've never. Okay, gotcha. So a couple more images of the after of the septic tank installed with the risers on the tank. So White Pines is complete. All the tulies were removed. The last gasp was to install the buoys at the spillway, because the spillway is now functioning as a true spillway. So when you go up to White Pines nowadays, you'll see actual buoys at the spillway, giving you a heads up to kind of keep away from the spillway. And then, the variability of what our construction crew does go from installing buoys at White Pines and in septic tanks in West Point to tapping ductile iron on a 6-inch pipeline at the Forest Meadows waste treatment plant. Right, that is, yep. So, and that's attributed to the UV project. So we want to make sure that there's no air whatsoever as that water enters that trough. Ebbets Pass is not immune to water leaks. And so Fairway Drive, here we are, you guys see this a lot in certain service areas, in certain areas, wet asphalt, then our guys get on it. And then you can see the image on the right there. It looks like at the connection to the main at a coupling, water just blowing out. And so guys jump in, get that handled, get that fixed, and we get back in business. Some system O&M cleanup, cleaning out around a fire hydrant and making it usable again. Washout associated with stormwater runoff. So some of these areas that Caltrans or the county wasn't able to incorporate into FEMA reimbursement requests, we can drop some base rock in there, put some rocks and go ahead and protect our valves.
Are we still eligible for FEMA reimbursement on these projects or not?
Not for this, but
Too far gone.
yeah, yep. But we have all of the ones that we found during the event, they're all in, and we're actually one of the first completers, if you will, if that's a word, of all of our applications for the emergency reimbursement funding for the county. So we're kind of ahead of schedule on everybody else. So it's hats off to our folks. Big trees, 2-inch I'm not sure what this valve was, if it was initially going to be, was it a blow off or an air relief valve? I'm not sure, but it, future blow off. Gotcha. So this box was leaking, this line was leaking, so our guys got in there, and it's just a great picture on the right. I think, you know, the above picture, you can see kind of the work that they're doing. You got somebody ready to hand over the tool, somebody ready to hand over the core, and your safety viz vest for a.
If you had turned that 180 and put a couple hands on that guy's feet, it would have been way better.
Yeah, yes. That's good. You're gonna see some more changes to the option port next month. You know,
Creative.
we're kind of Dylan Smith's world meets the field, pressure, understanding pressure and transient pressure surges. So we have pressure gauges that we can put on fire hydrants throughout our distribution systems. And then we can actually trend that information and load it up into a computer and understand how our system is functioning. So when a pump kicks on, if there's a control valve that's slow to operate on the upstream or downstream side of that pump, we can get a pressure surge. There's numerous ways that you can see changes in pressure. So our guys are working to understand how the system works. And if we can reduce pressure surges, we can reduce leaks. So it's really important work. So is storm and winter prep. So here we are with a pile of lumber. And then it looks like we're building some boxes on the right. And then you know, more boxes, they all look really nice and green. And then we go out to our brand new, newly constructed tanks with our outlet valves and our control valves. And we put those boxes that the guys constructed on there and we insulate everything. So, you know, just some of the work that our guys are able to do when they're not out fixing leaks, and they do great clean work. So hats off to them. Some more of that. And you can see the tapped spigots on the tanks that we used to pull samples for water quality. This is at our A tank site in the Jenny Lind water system in La Cantena, just cleaning up around the tank. Construction crew always trying to make sure that our sites are clean and tidy. So this is a washout that happened as a result of a water line leak, a service line leak on the left. You can see the hillside washed out. And so our construction crews, kind of work they do, the image on the right, they restore the integrity of the embankment and then put straw and wattle down, cocoa matting, and get it ready for winter time. A couple pictures of the Redwood tank at the B tank site, just so you can kind of see how TNS construction went about dismantling the tank and what those staves look like stacked up there in the inside of the tank. The tank is now gone, the foundation's gone, and they're moving forward in earnest at that site. Filter startup in West Point. So this is the brand new filter. It's a mirror image essentially of a filter that already exists at West Point, just brand new. And you can kind of see that the piping hasn't been completely painted yet. So this is the electrical was actually being tested during these photos. So testing whether or not valves open, whether or not airlines are charged when they're asked to be charged through the electrical components, the switches, the solenoids. And now jumping into what some of the work our electrical crew did last month. So this is the generator, West Point lift station. So there's one lift station in West Point. Generator just froze. And so our guys basically had to reestablish communication between the controller or the brain of the generator to the generator itself. Solenoid replacement at the Jenny Lind water treatment plant. So this controls the raw water feed to sections of filters 3 and 4. So if these fail, our electricians, because obviously this is directly related to the provision of drinking water. New human machine interface at the A tank pump station. So the A tank pump station is a key critical hub for conveying water throughout the Jenny Lind distribution system. And if our folks can't see what they're doing when they're trying to interact with the pumps through the HMI, that's a problem. So our electricians replace that. We have a biologist on staff who actually is a wastewater treatment operator. And Zach found this. I want to say it's an immature Cooper's hawk in the oxidation ditch at the Arnold Waste Plant. And so he rescued it. And he's just he has a wonderful talent with animals, so brought it back. And imagine your surprise as an operator when you show up at the Arnold Waste Plant, and there's a hawk in the lab. But yeah, he brought it back and let it go, and it still hasn't returned, he said, to say thank you. So he's waiting for it to come back. Some pics of the construction crew at Dylan's Memorial. I just hats off to everybody that was involved in that. Just no words really. The trucks that Dylan drove on a daily basis with the construction crew in front, and the turnout staff at his memorial. So just really hats off to everybody that was involved. And back to the hawk.
Great.
I got a quick, one more quick question. Speaking of cleanup, you talk about cleanup, getting ready for winter and whatnot. We had just wanted to follow up on former employee, pointed out a piece of property in the Valley Springs area. Just want to see if there's any update on cleaning that up.
Yes, so if it's the one I believe you're talking about along Hogan Dam Road.
I'm not quite sure.
Oh, yeah, that work is done. Yep.
Oh,
Yep.
okay, awesome.
That work's done. And I'll have
Thank you.
pictures. I'll actually have pictures for you in January. There was a request that we clean up our Huckleberry lift station site
Oh, I remember that.
in La
Right.
Capena, and
Mhm.
literally that day, facilities maintenance tech Eric was on site, taking evaluating what was said, and so everything's cleaned up.
And then following up on another in Copperopolis where we had some lack of painting. Buildings, and then I'm talking 6-8 months ago and now.
So the old treatment plant, yes, was painted, and there was some privacy staves that were falling apart that were replaced at the old treatment plant.
Okay.
However, we still do have the raw water pump station at the Kiva boat launch that we do need to address. So that building will still need to be painted. Yep.
It's on our list.
It is on our list. It's,
Okay.
and we do have, operations has funds for building maintenance. However, we're gonna have to get creative like we did with the water plant with this Kiva raw water pump station for sure. Because the funds
thank
aren't
you.
enough to cover the whole.
Good job. Thank you.
Thank you.
You and I were involved in a workshop. And so were you going to talk about that one, or was Mike?
Sure, well, it's in my ops report. So there's the CARB, California Air Resources Board has 4 working groups related to the implementation of the Clean Fleets Rule. And they're called the truck implementation groups, and one is Borderlands. So they want to look at the Clean Fleets Rule from the perspective of trucks crossing the border from Mexico into California. There's a group that wants to talk about and look at outreach. How do we educate folks on the Clean Fleets Rule? And there's the rules and regulations group that really kind of focuses into the details associated with the current rules and regs. And then there's the infrastructure group, and I'm on the infrastructure group. And so kind of recognizing the obvious, which was quite refreshing to be in this group with these folks. Right out of the gate, we're talking about the grid, and we're talking about grid reliability. So we spent the better part of 4 hours talking about charging stations and grid reliability for folks that are going to be required to purchase electric trucks next year, next month. So as you replace vehicles, our urban counterparts are going to have to replace their gas and diesel powered trucks with electric. So we talked about that in great detail, and Bertha attended that meeting, and we plan to meet. So one thing that kind of happens as all these 4 different groups meet, we learn something. One group makes a recommendation that the others adopt. So we didn't necessarily talk about increasing the frequency of our meetings in the infrastructure group. However, we plan to, because the rules and regs group understands that we have to meet, can't meet quarterly to make this effective. We have to meet every month. So you can anticipate a meeting next month for all the groups. That said, there's Assembly Bill 1594, which kind of addresses the Clean Fleets regulation for CARB that says if you're essentially a water and wastewater utility, and you need to replace a truck that addresses emergencies, you can do so with a gas or diesel powered truck. And so within these Clean Fleets Implementation Group conversations, the Air Resources Board acknowledged that they will amend the Clean Fleets regulation to make that acknowledgement that says essentially water and wastewater utilities can replace. There's no exemption requirements and there's no extension requirements for them. If they need to replace an emergency vehicle with a gas or diesel powered emergency vehicle, they can do so.
What's a definition of an emergency?
Well, so we haven't talked about that yet, but
And do we have to start reporting incidents as emergencies?
and I would contend that when it comes to public health and safety, all of the issues that our vehicles address, and this was kind of the climate of the room, are emergencies.
Well, I know it's the climate of all the participants, but it's not the climate of the state of California.
What's the, what is it, AB what?
1594. So I can tell you also that to dive into some of what you're talking about, Director Davidson, is Mountain Counties Water Resources Association plans to have some workshops in the late winter, early spring, to talk about AB 1594 and how it's going to apply to us specifically, meaning the rural utilities, because we're not required to comply until 2027. So part of the push for the urban folks right now that have to comply though in 24 is we need to understand what's going on. So next month you can anticipate a lot of the conversation will be around from at least the water side, because within the whole CARB conversation, water and wastewater are a small part, but all of those folks that are involved are really trying to push the conversation with.
Well, in Monterey at that breakout session, whatever, where we had the head of distribution from PG&E basically tell us that, there was no guarantees that they could bring the power to have charging stations to our existing facilities, that we may have to purchase other facilities in other areas, and that we should be prepared to charge during the day. Those were her words. I mean, is there a we can't comply group? I mean, I say that jokingly, but I mean, I brought this up to Michael a long time ago. It's like, I'd like to get our application in now and have a decision from PG&E that says, hey, we can't do it.
Right.
Because that's basically what they told us. So I don't know when we can actually make the application to say, hey, we want to plan for this future. This is what we believe we need. Can you give us that? And they're going to tell us, no, we can't. And
Right.
so then I just think that we need to have that ammunition to say, look, we've done everything we can to comply, but we can't buy electric vehicles and charge them in another county.
So that was a huge, long, very focused part of the rules and regs conversation, is exactly what you talked about. And unfortunately for the urban folks, so you can apply for an exemption based on the fact that the power provider cannot provide you with power or cannot accommodate the request for additional charging stations. They needed to submit that request for extension by the end of December of 23, the end of this month. And to date, CARB, the Air Resources Board, has not received any extension requests. And so that fact tells everybody that that provision within the regulation was lost on everyone. And so kind of a big circle back in that conversation is, we need to talk about this provision and we need to talk about this rule, because none of us understood that. The rural folks are kind of sitting back and we understand that. And we made the point, just exactly what you said, that we could come down to, our power purveyor could tell us, okay, in 7 years, we'll get you the power you need for West Point for 2 charging stations. And we're not a priority. We're not San Francisco. We're not Sacramento in terms of, the power demand. And so what does that look like? So that conversation is going to continue, but at least at the outset, the urban folks are really pushing for some sort of amendment to the extension. One of the frustrating things within these CARB conversations, though, is that CARB staff continually remind all of us that we're not here to make any amendments or any changes to what exists currently. The spirit of everything is to focus on how do we get this bird off the ground. And so we're constantly kind of just being redirected to, okay, well, yeah, okay, let's work on that. Let's set this aside. But hey, for those of you that do have a grid that's acceptable, what are you going to do to get this off the ground? And so then everything kind of stalls and we invariably end up talking again about the issue at hand. And so
You're a better man than me. I couldn't hack it.
Well, and I was just gonna say, so they may not have a we can't comply group, but to have Damon's voice on that group is huge because he can serve as the voice for the practical reality, the challenges that we face. And so just kudos to Damon for getting himself onto that group and.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Yeah.
Yeah, may I just add that as Damon said, I was there and listening to it, and the group was there were over 40 attendees, and these were general managers, assistant GMs, and consultants and what have you on this infrastructure thing. CCWD can feel very, very good about our representation through Damon, because Damon is there to tell them the reality of what it's all about.
Thank you.
And
He's also
we're-
working with mountain counties on,
Yeah.
and they have got involved with AB 1594.
They-
They have
they did.
legislative, committee meeting this week on Friday. And this is one of the items. And so it is good to see our legislator here in California hopefully coming up with some carve outs for this. And this is great for utility.
Will you be there at that meeting?
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
then you
Thank
can, give us a readout of what was discussed or what have you, or status.
Well, yeah, but Mountain Counties was one of our
Right.
greatest advocacy
Mhm.
programs here in the state.
Oh, yeah, I know.
They do
Uh-huh.
follow. This is just one of the items that we
Mhm.
discussed, but
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you. Appreciate it.
okay.
thank you.
Thanks.
General managers report.
Okay, I'm gonna hit a bunch of stuff. I'll try to hit it quickly. We've had as we always do, November and December, only one board meeting each month. There's been a lot that has happened since the last board meeting. So I'll try to touch on everything and I'll try to be brief on each item. Although we did have a second board meeting this month, as happens when we go down to one meeting, we always have to adapt if we need a second meeting. So we had a special meeting a couple weeks ago where we reported out from that closed session that we opted out of the 3M and DuPont PFAS settlements. So looking back since the last board meeting, I think one important effort that's underway, we reported out a few times last year on AB 552, which passed and put on the counties a responsibility to do drought resiliency planning, which is not a task or space that most counties typically have worked in the past. So we reached out to Calaveras County and said, hey, we already have this group. Calaveras conserves. Most of the water agencies in the county already participate. Let's build on that and turn this into the drought task force that has to be created under AB 552. And they participate in that group as well. So that discussion is ongoing. But there is an implementation period coming up, especially next year, where the counties are going to be responsible for producing reports on contingency plans for small water systems. And by small, I mean smaller than even, it's the mutuals, it's the 10 homes that have their own small water system, the really small ones. I think there's about 30 of them in Calaveras County. So for the smalls and for residential wells, the county has to produce a report that is essentially a contingency plan for water supply failures for those systems and possibilities for consolidation and other information. It all has to go into that report. There's grant funds that are available for that and technical assistance that's available for that. So Calaveras OES reached out to us and a few other of the water districts, and we're helping pull that information together for a grant submittal, so that we can get some funds to get a consultant to help pull that together, because I don't want it to fall on the water agencies to have to do the heavy lifting there, or the county. And so that effort is underway. There's a grant application due actually by the end of this month, but we're on it. I mentioned already the Water Resources Committee that we've sort of formed, or in the absence of Water Resources staff. It does put a big drain on engineering operations, and Kelly, who's done a fantastic job in his new role as External Affairs Manager, but he still has one foot in water resources as well. So it just puts a big additional strain on a lot of people who are already very busy. So we're working to fill those positions as quickly as possible. Along those lines, so related to those first two items, there was some discussion with Utica Water and Power over a proposal, a grant submission that they were considering making to FEMA regarding another, alternative source of supply in the event of another Darby fire where the upper flumes burn. It led to, they ended up not submitting that the grant proposal that they were working on, but it led to a good kind of opened up some dialogue between us and UPUD, Utica, and City of Angels Camp that we're looking forward to building on. So we'll, I think, starting periodic regular meetings to discuss those water supply reliability issues for the Highway 4 agencies, including
Was the discussion, did it go back to when they did have the water outage? Because there's a lot of documentation and a lot of work was done, albeit frantically. And not very well.
The goal is to have a better plan in place.
Have a plan. Yeah.
That
was chaos.
That's something we can all, there's a lot of alternatives there, and
People understand they only have about a 3-day supply of water, right? What's their?
Yeah, Hunters is maybe 200 acre feet. And that's, it's in the summer or the end of summer when fire season tends to be, there's no Mill Creek flow going into Hunters. So it's depends on our North Fork project, that water comes out of the Stanislaus through our project to provide their source of supply. And so anything that touches the North Fork project and their project, both separately FERC licensed projects, it's not only an engineering challenge, but it's a regulatory compliance challenge and all sorts of water resources issues behind those. So
But the City of Angels only have a few days of water supply if the flume is destroyed by fire or landslide or.
Oh, yeah. So that's if Hunters is cut off. Yeah, at most. I mean, Ross Reservoir is their storage upstream of Angels Camp, and then there's their very small 4-bay. So yeah, very small water supply.
Yeah, it's a risky deal.
Right. So that's those are, like I said, there's a lot of layers to those issues, but I'm looking forward to productive discussions on that front. A note on the claim summary briefly. I know Director Thomas has requested that where we have CIP expenditures in the claim summary, that we put a percentage of the budget that represents where there's an expenditure. It wasn't in the claim summary this time around, but we are working on that. I think that is something that hopefully we'll have in January.
Is it a percentage?
Percentage of budget, not percentage of, so the engineering assessment of actual, construction percentage of project completion might be different. That's something we dive into in the engineering committee in more detail. This would be percentage of budget. And so we'll include that in claim summary for CIP expenditures in the future. On a more celebratory note, we had a really good all hands meeting last week. Gosh, seems like a long time ago. That was just last week, and a very competitive. Our chili cook-off is no joke. I mean, we have staff that take it very seriously, and they are very good at it. So I did not enter this year because of how soundly I got defeated in the last time. So yeah, it was really successful. It was a lot of fun, and David Young? Yeah. It was really phenomenal. So
There a trophy?
there is actually, it is a chef's hat, and the winner gets to sign for that year. And so, yeah, the chef's hat was handed over from Jared Devich, our electrician, who came in second or third this year, I think, because his was also really good. It's definitely, I mean, you could do a cooking show on how good it is. It's very competitive.
Wow.
But also a lot of fun. And then we also had a staff organized a holiday party, very well attended. Thank you to Stacy and Kate and Pat and Jeremy, who did all the cooking, and everybody else that was involved. I'm sure I'm leaving off people, but it was very successful because of all of that effort. And we had a great turnout too. So it was a lot of fun. Mountain Counties Water Resources Association Forum, getting back to water business, was a while back. I've talked about it in a couple of our committee meetings since then. I just want to flag it again to make sure everybody has heard the report out on that. That's an annual forum. I'm sure most of our directors have been there at one point in time or another. And this year I presented on infrastructure funding challenges. And I just have to shout out Kelly for the slide deck that he and I talked about the content in advance, and then he's just like I said before, just a master at coming up with really compelling images. So much so that I've had probably no less than, I don't know, 8 or 10 people ask me since then for the slide deck because they want to use it as their, to inform their outreach on these infrastructure funding challenges that all of us water agencies face. And it was, I think people are when you show the gap between the need that we have for infrastructure funding and the resources that we have and the strain that it puts on our customers, it's a very compelling narrative, unfortunately, and it's not, it's a lot of the other agencies are in the same boat. So we're working together through mountain counties.
No, and I want to say something about that too, and to compliment you. You did receive a lot of compliments. I heard after that we've been to the Aqua conference, and I've heard a lot of people came up to me and talked to me not only about Kelly's slideshow deck. You presented with Adrian Beatty, this new CEO of Aqua JPIA, and with Larry McKinney from AWA, and from a lot of, a great panel on a lot of very knowledgeable people on a lot of subjects. And Michael's, I think your conversation and part of that, I think came to light, and a lot of it, and not taking anything away from you, but a lot of it was because of the presentation that you had behind you, explaining in a great way, and it is a great slide deck. I've gone through it, and I think people are still asking for it.
Yeah.
But yeah, kudos to both of you. I think it was made that program that much better.
And all of that is accessible. We have it on video.
It's on the Mountain Counties website, but we could share it with you.
Yeah.
And just in general, Mountain Counties is really, over the last couple of years, and this is not a knock on the previous leadership, but Justin's really, especially on the advocacy front, he's just taken it to another level, and he's brought in, Tom Cumston and others that are just industry experts that are really helping us, where Aqua can be great, but it's not always in lockstep with the issues that rural agencies and foothill agencies face. And that's really where Mountain Counties can step in and does a great job on advocacy. So just grateful
And I think a big part of the advocacy is not only Tom Cumston and Justin experience with that, but the lobbyists that they have hired on contract for a very reasonable price that everybody in the Mountain Counties has access to and is benefiting from.
Right.
Those guys, Jason and Audrey from that firm, are very, very impressive. Especially you walk around with them in the halls, and everybody knows them.
Yeah,
They're the Mia of California.
Yeah. That's a very strong team. Well, and since you mentioned me, I'll skip to some federal stuff. We've had some follow-up meetings from our most recent round of DC meetings, and in particular with USDA, with regard to the approval, the final financial closure of the biomass power facility on our property in West Point. It's kind of down to the wire to get the USDA loan approved. It's $25 million loan guarantee from USDA that is required in order to close the deal on that project. And they're very, very close. But as federal bureaucracies are, there's always little holdups. And so Mia stepped in and has been just fantastic in setting up meetings with the right people to help make sure that it's on track to get those approvals in place. And on time. And so we had another one just before the board meeting today. And I think, you know, thanks to her, I think they were able to kind of make sure that all the dots are connected and that it's on pace
What is that timeline?
by the end of this month. So very short. But they're very
This
close.
month?
So, yeah. And then also on that front, we've had kind of a relaunch, I guess I would put it, for the Army Corps on our Copper Cove wastewater treatment plant project. It was on hold as far as the Sacramento district was concerned because of the change in the guidelines and we don't need to get into the bureaucratic details here, but the change in the program guidelines that forced us to put the project on hold until we got the project partnership agreement and letter report executed by the Army Corps. And that finally happened last month. And so we have had sort of a relaunch with the Sacramento district and we went down there last week and met with them in person to move it forward as quickly as possible. There's always challenges with environmental review and completing the engineering and then making sure that the right funding pieces are in place at the right time. So it is a bureaucratic challenge, but it's all moving forward, and we're still optimistic that we will have a construction contract for at least a portion of that project in this federal fiscal year. So by October of 24, and we're laser focused on that. And Mia's been really helpful anytime there's a holdup. You know, she knows the right people to connect us with to make sure it's moving forward. We have a really strong team, and even in the absence of any water resources staff at the moment, we still have a very strong team that is focused on Norfolk project relicensing and renegotiation. We had a workshop last month that was kind of a pivotal, I think, work effort, and a lot of work, of course, that has come out of that. And our discussions within CPA are ongoing, but there'll be a lot more to report on that, I think, in the near future, as well as some public outreach that we're going to be, you know, strategic about. But I think over the course of the next year, you'll start to see more of that. And then also on outreach and external relations, we had an external relations committee meeting last week, reported out on the tour, the Jenny Lind tour that Damon already covered. We also had a town hall in Copper last week that I think was, you know, I think in the end, and I'd be happy to hear from other folks that were there that weren't CCWDs, because obviously I'm biased, but we got some tough questions, but we got some really good questions, some really thoughtful questions from the community members that were there. And so I think it led to a really good, productive dialogue. And from my perspective, a very, you know, in the end, a very positive outcome, just because of the amount of information sharing that was able to take place. Kelly, again, great job on the slides. We've been working on incorporating surveys in those presentations. We get feedback from people in real time, which is something I think we'll expand on in the future, but it's already providing some useful information. So I think overall, even though that was the day Director Thomas tested positive, so he was unable to be there in person. Other than that, I think it went very well. We had our Aqua conference, really busy conference, a lot of good information, it was actually good timing for multiple reasons, but a lot of discussion with other agencies about that, the PFAS settlement issue that we were having to deal with that week. So it was nice to be able to just talk to other agencies in person about how they were navigating that situation, in addition to everything else that we deal with, and just a lot of really good stuff over the course of that conference. I am very excited for next month I think we will finally be going live with our customer portal. I don't know that we've set a specific date yet, but we will be having we're working on an outreach plan, and we will have a presentation at one of the board meetings in January to sort of roll that out and walk through how it all works and what it's going to look like. And I think that'll probably be the go live date. If we can work it out that way, it'll be one of those board meetings.
So January will go live.
That's the plan. And then on the finance side, we're almost to mid-year already. So, we've been talking, the management team and department heads already, about changing some of the budget development work that we do. And so we're going to have a little bit of a different process this year than we've had in the past. But that work is already starting, and that'll really kick off in earnest with the mid-year budget review in the second meeting in January, where we hopefully will be finalizing the audit from the last fiscal year as well. So a lot moving over the next month in the finance department. And then just lastly, Damon touched on it briefly already, Dylan's memorial. It's been hard for us to even talk about, I think, up until now, because of how big of an impact it's had. But I just want the board to know that we're not done on that front. We'll have some items for the board. So I know the board has asked to acknowledge that as well. So we'll be bringing that back in January, and making sure Dylan's legacy is enshrined here. So there will be more on that front to come. And I think that's all I have. We're
No, that was pretty quick.
we're as busy as always.
Not a lot of detail, just
High level, yeah.
Bertha, I have a couple of questions for Michael.
Uh-huh.
Okay, Michael, you mentioned early on in your presentation about how with the drought resiliency that the county has been saddled with it, that we need to start talking more closely with them, or you suggested that we should. But what about, several years ago, we used to have some productive meetings, I thought, with on a kind of an informal basis with the county and CCWD leadership getting together, every other month or something. Has that come up for discussion? And I'm particularly disappointed that we haven't seen Teresa Hitchcock in our board chambers, and she's been there now going on 2 years. So
I don't think it's been that long yet for Teresa, but I'll revisit that with her and invite her again. The scheduling hasn't worked out, but I have had good discussions with her and Marcos Munoz at the county. Those discussions you're referencing, I think we're higher level than that even, but I think that's absolutely something we can bring back. The effort I was talking about is mostly within the county. It's led by Calaveras OES, by their OES department. But it is ultimately going to have to go to the supervisors. It's a county responsibility, but it's something that the water purveyors in the county are inevitably going to have to be involved with. So it's something we're collaborating with them on. But I appreciate that suggestion. I'll invite Teresa again and see if we can make sure we make that happen, and see if we can restart those meetings as well.
Okay, and you also mentioned earlier in the meeting a couple of times about the annual reports that our Water Resources Department they are under an obligation to file them on a timely basis. Who's collecting and monitoring that tickler file on those reports?
Yeah, so that's what we established that whole committee for, was to come up with the whole list of, it's not just annual reports. We have monthly reports, we have annual reports. In addition to that, we have the new water use efficiency compliance report that's due for the first time this year, which is somewhat redundant of some of the other reports, but nonetheless a reporting requirement. We have a lot of different water resources reporting requirements that are kind of shared between Jesse Hampton and Damon in operations, Kelly in water resources / external affairs. Mark and his team in engineering are on that committee. So it is a bit of a all hands on deck water resources reporting effort at the moment. And then as always, our contract hydrologist helps with water rights reporting, which is annual. And I'm sure I'm forgetting a few others. There's a lot of water resources reporting.
Well, won't it help with these things like the water efficiency reports and stuff to have our the AMI system up and dependable and so that you can refer to it? I mean, you should be able to tell at a glance what we're doing on the water distribution compared to water losses and production. So
Yeah, it certainly helps. We're still kind of learning how to manipulate that into the useful data that we need for those different reporting requirements and their different agencies and different formats, and somewhat different information, even though some of it is redundant. It doesn't provide, there's other data that we would like to have that we don't currently have. So we're looking at that as well and looking for grant funding to create a plan for more accurate distribution system monitoring, in addition to just the customer meters and the data that we generate from the new customer meters. But it certainly is a huge improvement over the unreliable data that we had before.
okay, and you may not have any late breaking information on this, but the hue and cry that we've been hearing since September about how crippling the rate increases have been. What about our customer assistance program? We have been reporting lately that there's a lot of funds available that haven't been applied for. Is there any change in that?
I know that we have done some additional outreach on that to make sure that the word is out that there is space available in that program. And then we talked about it earlier this week, but I didn't get a report back yet on whether that has actually generated additional signups for that program. But I will follow up on that, and we can report back to the board on that.
Okay, I think that's very important that you continue to try to get that information out to the public. So
agree. Yeah.
Okay, well, that's all the questions I had for you. Thank you. Good report.
Thank you.
Okay. So I have board reports.
I have nothing to report.
In the interest of time, I have nothing to report as well.
Cindy?
I have nothing to report.
And Russ?
How much time do I have?
Well, Michael took it all.
I cede the remainder of my time.
How sick are you?
Well, I just want to express my appreciation to outgoing President Ratterman for a remarkable job on many fronts. I feel like it's going to be a tough act to follow, to be president of Mountain Counties and on the JPIA board, and on that front, is your golf game improving at all?
It's suffering big time from all these activities.
Okay, but in all seriousness, Scott, you've done a heck of a job. I don't know, representing the district and keeping our name out there. And anyway, my personal congratulations for a job well done. Thanks.
Thank you very much, President Thomas. I really appreciate that.
Okay.
Appreciate the acknowledgement.
Hey,
Thanks.
President Thomas, I shook his hand for you.
Oh, okay.
We're
All right.
spreading our own germs right here in the room.
Yeah. I'll
Speaking
try
of
to
that,
keep.
maybe we should get out of this
Okay.
room as soon as we can.
Okay, as far as I'm concerned, I just want everybody to know that it's been 20 up the hill. So guess what
Uh-oh.
season is on its way?
20 degrees. Wow.
Bear Valley opened December 8th. So
Cross country opens December 22nd.
so otherwise it's cold up the hill, and that's all I have. Any information, future agenda items?
You just need to read the
Okay.
closed session,
Okay.
ask for public comment.
Okay.
Francisco has.
Close public comment.
Francisco de la Cruz again. Thank you. I have to be honest with you and express a little bit of a disappointment in that at the external relations meeting, there was a comment made that left me wondering about staff utilization. Kelly reported out that after looking at all of the volumes of calls and types of calls that were handled, et cetera, that accounted for 10% of her staff's use of time. And she alluded to a lot of other activities that they were involved in that I'm assuming is some of the committee work that Michael has referred to, but nobody followed up on that. How a significant part of customer relations, I thought, was customer outreach. And at the same time, we have 150 vacancies in this assistance program. And I'm going, well, if 10% of the time is spent speaking to customers and 90% of the time is available for other activities, how are we still having vacancies? That was one area that didn't get a lot of attention. Another area, Kelly G presented a section on the town meeting, but the important part that caught my attention was there seems to be a backing away of the subject of metrics. Apparently, there was some discussion of metrics at Aqua, and well, nobody else is doing metrics, so why should we be doing metrics? That was sort of the kind of sense that I got. So I need to ask formally if there is a backing away of making data transparently available to the ratepayer. Data that is supposedly related to the provision of services. Data that is specifically related to the cost of services study. And I've not heard any discussion on it, and I just wanted to express my disappointment in that because I thought directors were in the ratepayers forum, and those directly affect me and all the other ratepayers that are having issues with the rate increase. I'm trying to help you guys sell it, but I can't get enough information to make informed decisions as to what's going on. And I don't know how else to put it. It seems like I'm being, leave us alone, would you? We know what we're doing. We don't need your help, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If that's the case, then tell me out front. Don't, well, we'll get to it, or we'll use this and we're working on it. We'll get it, et cetera. It's now the end of the year. We've been at this since August, September. I haven't seen one actionable set of data. And I've heard a lot of talk about we're working on it. I'm losing faith.
And
It's not an
I'm just-
agendized item, so
Yeah,
it's something we can discuss.
We're off agenda, but we'll follow up on that.
okay, and you will get back to him
Absolutely.
and to answer to the board, please. Okay. Closed session, item 9, closed session, conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, significant exposure to litigation pursuant to subdivision D2 of Government Code Section 54956.9, 2 potential cases. In the closed session, please.
You typically would ask for public comment on that. Ask
Okay.
for public comment on.
Any public comment on closed session?
Box hasn't been opened. That box hasn't been opened.
I made a mistake of getting like one of those tubs of salted caramels from Costco. I've got